Welcome to Sid Caudle, Christian People's Alliance. Sid, we're in the deep end as we usually are. Lord Harmer. It seems to me that every Labour government has a particular Machiavellian character somewhere in the wings. And
Mm.
Lord Harmer is a disaster in many ways. I mean, we've got to attribute the Chagas Island problem to him. And now what he's trying to do is dig a hole, literally, for our soldiers, and they are deciding that they don't want to participate in war anymore. Why should they?
Mm.
Because they're taken to court 20 years after an event. What is behind this?
Yes. What was behind it, I think, is crazy socialist principles. But this is part of what Keir Starmer's background. It's actually part of his human rights, apparently. It's just what he was pursuing when he was Attorney General and when he was head of the Crown Prosecution Service, and prosecuting soldiers was part of what Starmer was about. And of course, Lord Harmer is one of his friends. But as far as I'm concerned, this is absolutely, utterly wrong. I mean, if we think back to what was going on during the what are known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland, um, what happened was that the SAS soldiers were hiding in ditches for long, long periods of time, waiting for IRA soldiers to come along the road. And when they came along the road, they jumped out the ditch and killed them. And this was happening again and again and again, to the point where Jerry Adams, who was basically, well, he was head of Sinn Féin, which was the political arm of the IRA. They didn't, at that time, they didn't mind saying they were the political arm of the IRA. Where Jerry Adams turned around to John Major and said, "We want peace and we want an end to the war." So they started negotiating. And we know in the end, the negotiations led to the Good Friday Agreement, which actually happened under Tony Blair. But all the negotiations took place under John Major. Now, the fact that the RA were basically saying we want peace means that the British government was in a very strong position to get an agreement. And so it wasn't a wonderful agreement that Tony Blair got. It was on a plate for him, frankly, before he even came into power. But it was the SAS that brought the RA to the negotiating table, and they did a fantastic job. And the idea that now we should start prosecuting them for actually bringing peace is utterly, utterly evil. I mean, in fact, I think it's incredible.
Many would agree, Sid. Another chapter to be written on there before it's finished, but we move quickly on. And I've got something to read from a couple of papers. I'll sort of combine them if I can, and say public sector productivity has been flatlining for years, while the rest of the economy has actually improved a little, which means taxpayers are steadily paying more and more for less and less. The less and less of less, of course, comes from the government institutions, courts, prisons, mounting delays. It was significant this last week. The Transport Secretary's car was wrecked by her driving into a pothole. Rough justice, that one, I suppose. NHS dentists are rarer than hen's teeth, says the article. Weekend GP appointments and generally GP appointments you just cannot get. And especially now, as they've introduced AI, you had to get past the Dragon Queen to get an appointment anyway. But now with AI, it's practically impossible. So many searches have gone over to that system. It's not good, and many people are saying we've got to start doing rigorous performance reviews to the mandarins, to the government departments, anybody that is in charge of a bureaucracy that is causing chaos. They've got jobs for life, Sid. They're being paid more with higher pay rises than the public sector, they've got it always.
Absolutely, and this is actually in our manifesto. We've actually said in our manifesto that whereas the private sector has taken major steps to make itself more efficient, it's not happened in the public sector. The public sector now is becoming more and more bloated, spending more and more money, and there's no improvement in efficiency. And there has to be improvement in efficiency. And I think it's highlighted by the fact that even this week, GB News has been reporting that the total cost of quangos is now 391 billion per year, which is something we've been saying. When you actually look into the details of those figures, 173 billion goes to NHS England, which goes to the NHS. About 73 billion goes to the skills agency, which goes to teachers, and about 48 billion goes to the HMRC, some of which is paid for child benefit. So we can't just cut all of that. But there's still over 100 billion left, much of which goes on environment quangos, of which, the Labour Party have set up 28 new quangos since they came to office, seven of which are environment quangos. We just get rid of them altogether, frankly. I mean, we just literally say, sorry, we're not funding you anymore. If they want to carry on, they can carry on, but they're not going to be funded by the government anymore. It's quite simple, and we reckon we could immediately save 50 billion. But as far as the NHS is concerned, our policy, of course, is GP fund holding. So all the money will go to the GPs, which then buy operations from hospitals, and hospitals have to be efficient. And also, the GPs will send as fewer people as possible to hospital because they want to retain as much money as possible within their surgery. So suddenly, the GPs start becoming efficient and start providing uh, appointments for their patients, which is what happened in the 1990s. I mean, we're not suggesting something but we don't know whether it works or not. We know it works. It's already worked. And the only reason why Tony Blair in 1998 stopped GP fund holding was for political reasons. He didn't like the concept, which was bringing business efficiency into the NHS. So he scrapped it. And whereas previously under GP fund holding, we knew exactly how much every operation cost because hospitals had to price it, suddenly now we're back in complete darkness again, where everyone's just going for operations, but we don't know how much everything costs. We don't really know how to improve efficiency. So what this government's done is thrown another 30 billion at the NHS and hoping that thereby they'll reduce waiting lists and help improve the system. And they have got waiting lists down a little bit, but nothing much because the system itself is grossly inefficient, which is what you've highlighted.
It's not good state of affairs. This government is setting up records the whole time. Nobody's got a good word to say for them, not even their own press.
Mm.
He's got to go. He's failed in so many ways. 16 U-turns. Some people say 18, but there you go, and counting. He tries things and they don't work. And we've mentioned a couple already this morning. But let's look at the Peter Mandelson affair, which has not gone away yet. A typical absolute nonsense, even thinking about appointing that man. And things like this don't go away. We've got an extreme left wing government, Sid. It does not work, and it looks as though nobody wants it. Now, I say nobody wants it. The two leading people at the moment to be the next Prime Minister, how soon after the local elections this Thursday that comes, is anybody's guess. But you have been on the doorstep. What's your feedback?
Oh, people are very angry with the Labour Party without a shadow of doubt, and people are. I've had a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, I voted Labour all my life, but I'm not voting Labour again," and they're looking for an alternative, and there's no question about that. I do slightly disagree with you though, saying that what we've got is an extreme left government. You see, if we'd have had a Corbyn government, that was an extreme left government. And Corbyn was basically going to nationalise everything. So he was going to remove all private contractors, for instance, from the NHS. Well, Starmer hasn't done that. he was going to set up a national investment fund with 500 billion to take over in all major industries and put them under state control. Well, Starmer hasn't done that. So there's a lot of extreme policies which Corbyn would have introduced if he'd been in power, which Starmer hasn't introduced. But what Starmer's done is produce chaos, frankly, because he hasn't thought through what he was going to do when he came into power before he got elected, which he had plenty of time to do. I mean, he was in opposition long enough. And while he was in opposition, he should have been preparing for government. But instead of being preparing for government, all his focus was on change, change, change. And that's all the policies he was putting forward. And in fact, you could actually say it was a tribute to Ed Miliband, by contrast, who actually produced his stone pledges. I mean, which were ridiculed, but nevertheless, he actually did produce some pledges. But when I come into government, this is what I'm going to do. These are my pledges, and these pledges are cast in stone. That was his message. But Starmer didn't have any clear pledges. I mean, he said some things that he was going to do, but like you say, he's reversed most of those things. So he hasn't come into power with a clear idea of what he was going to do. So it's been chaos. Try this, try that. I mean, the worst thing, obviously, was cancelling the winter fuel payments for pensioners, which they did immediately they got into power. That wasn't in the manifesto, and then they U-turned on it. I mean, it's just like utter chaos. And really, I'm afraid this Starmer government has been just awful. And as far as Peter Mandelson was concerned, I think frankly, that was just job for the boys. I mean, he saw Mandelson as a friend. Apparently, Mandelson had been involved in the Labour campaign in 2024 that helped them get into office, and he was to be paid back for the help that he gave. He was certainly somebody who was rabidly pro-EU, and Starmer's rabidly pro-EU, so he thought he would, help in that regard. Having somebody in Washington that was rabidly pro-EU would help further their policies, and he didn't actually think about the morals of this man that he was appointing, and the fact that he'd already been removed twice from office because of resigning in disgrace, as well as his connections with Jeffrey Epstein, which Starmer knew about. I mean, he didn't want to say he knew about them, but because of Kebby Madinock, thank goodness, has been very clever. She's like, did you know about the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Oh, you Tories, did you know about the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Oh, you Tories, fourth time. Did you know about the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Yes, I did know. I mean, the fourth time, he finally admitted, yes, he knew. So he knew everything. What's happened since, it's just been Starmer trying to lie his way out of trouble. And it's disgusting. It's utterly disgusting that we got a prime minister that is so dishonest.
Yeah, again, a lot of people agree with that. Talking about left-wing governments, which is truly left-wing, but you certainly got this here in Spain. We've
Yes.
got an extreme left-wing government that, again, are turning it on because they need the support of the ultra, let's call them, left-wingers. So it's a bit of a coalition, and it's providing havoc for people, especially expatriates, especially for people retiring in Spain, especially for people trying to work in Spain, and more especially for the Spanish economy. What a disaster when you get a philosophy taking over, like Britain, your whole intent and campaign and reality. What does that mean for people on the ground? Well, this present government here in Spain had decided, because Britain is not in the EU, and boy, is it payback time. If people in Britain think they've got it tough, a lot of expats have got it tough as well. And to the extent, if you buy a house now, this time next year, you will have to pay twice as much for that house in Spain as a local even anybody else in the EU. Don't forget, Britain are outside the EU.
Yeah.
Day to day, we come across little digs because they hate Great Britain, especially Spain and a number of other countries on the continent. They want retribution, payback time. The number of times that I personally have interviewed somebody, and it's always good if they've written a book, most of them have, send your book over. Let's have a read of it, and then we can make the interview hopefully a bit more interesting. And right, we will do that. We've stopped it. It would be cheaper for me to actually fly back to Britain, go into Waterstones and buy a book there and fly back into Spain. Because at the border, they are really crippling everything and charging a fortune for delivery of that book, which will, by the way, take on average 3 to 6 months to get here. There's all sorts of ways they're getting their own back. And when you fly in as a holidaymaker, you're asked to do things that the rest of Europe are not asked to do, and it's impossible to in an airport. 4 to 8 hours, some people are being delayed because they've not got the right paper. And now Spain have said, you have got to prove you've got enough money in your bank accounts in the United Kingdom. Because if you happen to fall ill here, then we've got to make sure you're not a burden on our National Health Service. Now compare that with soft Britain, who invite everybody in. And it goes beyond that. The wealth tax here and the solidarity tax, now that's right out of the Marxist songbook, make it impossible for people with any wealth at all, even moderately wealthy people coming to Spain. They cannot stay here. It's too costly. So Spain are, because of their political philosophy, the biggest part of their economy is being affected. Tourism. But they don't care, Sid, because they're only interested in one thing, just like GB, and that is staying in office. Beggar the rest of the country. We must stay in office, says Sir Keir and co. And it's the same in Spain. That is not what is called over here looking after the pueblo, looking after the real people in the real villages. They don't care. Politics, Sid, is very dirty at the moment. I don't envy what you're going through.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you covered a lot of stuff there. I mean, the first thing I would say is that Keir Starmer ought to be negotiating with Spain on behalf of British tourists. That is what the British government's supposed to be doing and supposed to be about, taking action in the interests of their citizens. Instead of negotiating with the Spanish government to assist British people in Spain and to negotiate some agreement to make it easy for tourists to go in and so on and so forth. Instead of that, they've just given away Gibraltar. They've just said to Spain, "Oh yeah, we don't need Gibraltar. You can have Gibraltar." Starmer's an internationalist. You know, he's quite happy to have open borders, but you know, he's not doing his job, frankly. And the other side of the coin is what you were saying about the Spanish government and the way they're handling the economy is typical socialist idea, as I've said before, that the economy is like a cake. So they just think, oh, we tax the rich, you know, we have a wealth tax, we take people's wealth and then we give it to the poor, and that's what gives us a fairer society. Tax the billionaires, you know, tax anyone with any wealth, you know, and let's give it to the poor, and this is what we're going to do to make our society fair. And they don't realize that the economy isn't like a cake where there's a set amount of money in the economy, which if you distribute it more fairly, you'll have a fair society. That's not how it works. The economy is like a train where the engine is business, and a lot of these wealthy people that you're chasing out of the country are producing wealth for you. And if there's no wealth, there isn't money for people in the carriages, which is the health service and education and benefits and defence and goodness knows what else the government does. And there's only money for all these things because of prosperous and successful businesses. And you have to look after business. I mean, I know I've said this before, but this is what socialists can't grasp for some reason, but they need to grasp it because if they don't, you just end up destroying the economy. And it's happening in the UK to a lesser degree, but I'm sure it's happening in Spain. You know, they're just chasing everyone abroad. And by the way, this is green policy in the UK. It's not Labour policy to have a wealth tax, thank goodness, which highlights again what I said that Starmer could be more left wing than he is. But it is green policy. You know, green policy is to impose a wealth tax of 1% on anyone that's got more than £10 million of wealth. And they say that that would raise 88 billion. It wouldn't raise 88 billion. They'd be lucky to raise 8 billion from that policy. But they think, oh, wealth tax, wonderful idea, wealth tax. Yes, that'll make the economy fairer. No, it'll send rich people abroad and make the whole country poorer.
That's an excellent point. The wealth tax, by the way, in Spain is far higher than the Greens. It's 4 and 5% in some regions. There's a lot of autonomous regions in Spain, and it's causing more chaos. There's enough chaos in Britain with Wales and Scotland. But I tell you what, here it is chaos. The Catalans want their own government. Up in the northwest of Spain, País Basco wants their own government. It goes on and on.
Let me just say, you see, the Greens are saying we'll introduce a wealth tax, 1% of anyone who's got more than £10 million of wealth, which sounds okay. You know, it's only 1%. You know, and people with more than 10 million, you know, well, they're very rich people. But they say they're going to raise 88 billion from it. You know, there's no way they can raise 88 billion from that wealth tax. So the reality would be that they come in, they'd introduce their wealth tax, and they'd say, "Oh, we're not getting as much as we need from it, so we're going to have to increase it to 2%, and we're going to have to make the threshold instead of making the threshold 10 million, we're going to have to make the threshold 2 million." And then the next thing is, well, we need more money from our wealth tax, so we're going to have to increase it to 4%. But see, what they're saying is they produce very low figures to make people think, oh, that's not bad. But then the reality, as you say in Spain, becomes completely different once they've got the principle accepted.
Yes, and to illustrate and agree with your point, absolutely. How about this one? With an autonomous region, it's not really a region, it's a city. Madrid, it's massive. They have actually got a lady called Isabella Diaz in power there. And she's a centrist, perhaps a little bit right of centre, but she's got nous. And if you look at a comparison again, thousands of millionaires and billionaires have left Britain in the last 12 months. And it's not the fact that we'll be getting less tax, it's the basic fact that these are employing people. It's
Yeah,
mega negative for Britain.
yeah.
And she's seen this. And what she's done is said, no inheritance tax, no wealth tax. And the billionaires are flooding it. And literally, in the last 2 years, in this case, Madrid is very, very rich indeed. New houses, new construction, everything. Now, that's reality, Sid, not political philosophy.
Yes, exactly. This is the whole point. You see, exactly the point I'm making. The economy is not like a cake, which is a fixed amount of money in it. You know, if you actually reduce tax and get rid of your wealth tax and reduce inheritance tax and you encourage wealthy people to come and live, you know, suddenly you find we've got a lot more money now. You know, and we've got money to spend on the NHS and education and goodness knows what else because wealthy people are now here. If you chase all the wealthy people away, you suddenly find you've got no money for your services. I mean, it's obvious, quite honestly, when you think about it, but the socialists can't grasp it.
No, set in ways, absolutely. Now we'll stick on regionality, let's call it, and go to the Scottish First Minister, John Swinney. He's proposing price controls in the time of austerity that we have in GB on groceries to ease the pressure of cost of living. We're going back to the 1970s there. Um, is this another madness caused by Tony Blair giving freedom, inverted commas, to Scotland and to Wales. They've been nothing but a thorn in the flesh since they got their semi-autonomy.
Well, yes, I mean, I do think that a measure of devolution was a good idea. But the problem is, as time has gone on and they've had these referendums over devolution, really Gordon Brown was somebody who really took the initiative to say, oh, we've got to give more power to Scotland. We've got to head off the vote for complete independence by giving more power to Scotland. So then they give them tax raising powers, and then they give them powers over the NHS and so on and so forth. And before you know where you are, the Scottish government, as it's now called, I mean, at first it was just a glorified council. But now it's the Scottish government has got power over almost everything other than foreign affairs, and defence. But yeah, in my opinion now, devolution has gone too far.
We move on, and we are mindful, Sid, of your athletic past doing the marathon. And I've seen pictures, and maybe a lot of our viewers have, of the half marathon actually in Beijing. It was full of robots and it beat the record time quite handsomely. It looks a bit odd, but there again, the point of what I'm saying here was that there was another headline. This is the future, but Britain is so far behind, we can't even automate our London tube system. Now, there's something quite deep in that because, of course, now if you're a tube driver, you're working 3.5 days a week for more than a surgeon gets in many cases. And the simple answer is, Sid, let's reinvent the wheel, can we? We've got many cities in the world now that have a fantastic, clean subway system. And it's all automatic and it's not rocket science any longer. But the unions are still so powerful, we can do nothing about it.
Well, this is where negotiation comes in. But of course, we do have the DLR in London, which are driverless trains, and they work perfectly efficiently and perfectly effectively. And you're absolutely right. There's no reason whatsoever why we can't make the entire underground system driverless. But yeah, there has to be negotiation with the unions. And this is why, frankly, as I was just saying before, that, when they were all on strike, and the Labour Party just basically gave them what they wanted. And what they should have done is negotiated productivity improvements in return for pay increases. And one of the productivity improvements can be increasing the number of driverless trains. And like you say, it's not rocket science. It's just basic negotiating principles. You give people more pay, but you get something in return. And if you give them more pay and get nothing in return, you're not doing your job. I should say, by the way, while we're talking about this, that Boris Johnson did a wonderful job in making the underground, well, got rid of all the ticket offices, so that almost all the underground now is just you buy a ticket on a machine, and you use an Oyster or whatever. The only ticket offices are maybe in King's Cross in Pancras or in Victoria, major hubs. All the other stations are now just, you buy a ticket on a machine or use an Oyster. And that was Boris Johnson's doing. Now, when he did that, they all went on strike, but he saw it off and got the job done and increased efficiency enormously in the underground system by doing that job. So that is the first principle that he managed to introduce and managed to do it. So it can be done. They could introduce driverless trains. It's quite possible.
There are people that are actually saying that the whole political geography of our country would have been so much better today if Boris Johnson was re-elected as Mayor of London and was still in power. And of course, who we would have had to deal with COVID would probably have been a lot better than Boris. Certain people are saying that out about Brexit as well, because that was a bit of a PR stunt. Get Brexit done. He didn't, did he?
Well, to be fair, Boris Johnson was elected in December 2019 to get Brexit done, and in January 2020, COVID struck. And, it literally came very soon afterwards. So he then had that emergency to deal with. And obviously, that then had to be the focus of the government. They had to put a lot of money into the system in order to keep the economy going while COVID was there, with people forced to stay at home, etc. So I don't blame Boris Johnson for not making massive improvements as a result of Brexit when he had that to deal with. And of course, then he was pushed out of office because of the party that he went to during COVID, which was very unfortunate. But I mean, maybe just the fact that he didn't tell the truth, I think, was the biggest issue, frankly. But in retrospect, at least Boris Johnson gave Parliament a free vote, which then decided to report him to the Standards Committee, and the Standards Committee decided that he breached the rules, and then he was forced to resign. But at least it was a free vote to Parliament. Which Starmer, of course, has forced all his MPs to stop him being referred to the Standards Committee because he knows full well if he'd been referred to the Standards Committee, he would have been forced to resign. So, it's at least Boris Johnson showed some principle there. But as far as Brexit was concerned, Theresa May, when she was in power, after the referendum, she tried to stop Brexit happening in effect because the deal that she produced was so appalling that it was just basically meant that we were going to follow all the EU rules by now being out of the EU, which is exactly what Keir Starmer's now trying to take us back to. The Theresa May deal, where you follow all the EU rules, but you're not actually in the EU. It is just ridiculous. So her Brexit was just complete nonsense. I totally believe that Boris Johnson was committed to a full, proper Brexit where we would take control, but he was just unable to implement it.
There we go. History will rewrite that, no doubt, along the line. Back to, well, your friendly and everybody's friendly, it appears, marathon, London Marathon. Things are now emerging about them banning, Sid, these influencers that are taking their phone cameras along with them. They're causing chaos. I mean, it's great, it's healthy, but when you're stumbling over people, it's bad enough stumbling over a big teddy bear or whatever the current thing you have to dress in. But when you're stumbling over people who've got erected
Oh,
in front of their faces, it's no longer sport, is it?
I mean, I laugh because if you're a serious runner, we're near these people because obviously when I did the London Marathon in just under 3 hours, you're there with a lot of club runners, and at that sort of pace, there aren't loads of people with you. In fact, there's one place where the London Marathon doubles back, which is just after Tower Bridge. So you literally go over Tower Bridge, then you turn right, you go around Canary Wharf, and then when you've gone around Canary Wharf, you come back and you go towards Westminster. Well, when you're doubling back, then you find that on your side of the road, in my case anyway, there's relatively few people. It's all very well spaced out. On the other side of the road, going towards Canary Wharf, there was literally, masses of people. So the answer to the solution to the problem that you're raising is to do more training and run faster, and then you won't have influences with phones around you.
Yes, what an age we're living in. 15 minutes of fame and all that, isn't it? I'll tell you the other interesting we've come across this week is the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, are in trouble. Now, I ranted on about this, and we have disagreements sometimes over this, and that is working from home. because their union, the ONS, have won a sizable and significant victory. Now, people like working from home for various reasons, some good, some not so good. And it appears that the Office of National Statistics has committed quite a number of errors over the last 12 months that never happened before. No joined upness, in other words. And now they've got this 2-day week working from the office, or they tried to get it. And then the judge said, no, you can work as many hours and as many days as you want from home because of a point of law. Because when they were advertising for help employees at the ONS, this was again because of COVID, they advertised, oh, you can work from home. And because of that, the whole thing can be worked from home and the inefficiency will carry on. Now, is this another instance, Sid, where the law is above justice and sense, common sense?
Well, I think we disagree on this, frankly, because I mean, my wife works from home. She's working for Buckinghamshire County Council, and it's quite interesting. I mean, when she only started the job working for them from 1st of February, and initially she had to go into the office every day, and she was literally getting up at 6:30 in the morning in order to get into the office and working with the manager and so on and so forth. Now she's been signed off, fully qualified, doesn't need to work with a manager at all, can just go and do all the job on her own. She doesn't actually need to go into the office at all. I mean, her job is to inspect premises. So she's a food safety inspector, and to make sure that, that all the premises operate the correct food safety standards. So she can just make appointments to go and visit the premises. She can then come back home, write a report, send them off. Now, as far as the council is concerned, when she went for the interview for the job, they said to her, we don't care whether you work from the office or you work from home or where you work. We don't care what hours you work, as long as you do the job. That's all we're concerned about. You've got to visit the premises, you've got to do your reports, you've got to do them correctly and efficiently. And provided you do that, the rest doesn't matter to us. You can be working at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, visiting premises if you want, and you can be doing all your work maybe 3 days a week and then have the rest of the week off. That doesn't matter to us, provided you do the job. And frankly, I think that's a sensible attitude. Because who cares when you work as long as you do the work? I mean, there's too many people in the past who've worked 9 to 5, in an office, but half the time when they're working 9 to 5 in an office, they might not be really doing the job. In the office, they might be playing games on the computer or something. It's that's people have been caught doing that in office time. So it doesn't automatically follow because somebody sat in an office, they're doing more work than somebody at home. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Well, the reason we disagree, of course, we come across different people. I know your wife is extremely conscientious, and in
Mm.
effect, she's acting, of course, as a self-employed person to some
Yeah.
extent in her position. But there's very few people that have got the get up and go that other people have. More the other side of the coin, Sid, and people get away with as little work as possible for as much money as they can get, call it human nature. But
Well,
that is a fact. And the other thing, Sid, is that I'm dealing with the bureaucracy in the United Kingdom and Spain every day of the week. And it's a nightmare. Nothing's joined up because, as an example, if I ask a difficult question, oh, I can't answer that. I will ask my line manager. I will send an email. It's a nightmare. Weeks later, you get an answer, and then it's the wrong answer, so you have to start from afresh.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you see, the focus has to be on getting the job done. See, it's not just my wife. I can actually say the same for my children. I mean, I've got three girls, all of whom do a lot of work from home. I mean, they're all working for the government in one way or another. I've got two sons-in-law that work from home. I mean, one doesn't. One is a teacher, so he's now a deputy head teacher, in fact. So obviously he has to go to work because you can't teach children from home. But I mean, nevertheless, I mean, he can still come home and do some work from home. But my eldest daughter, for instance, they've just increased the size of their house so that they've got space in their house to have an office for her and an office for him in the house where they work from when they're working from home. And the children are now of an age where they're going to school. They're sort of like 5 to 11. So they're able to take the children to school, work from home, and all day, and be in separate offices, in the house, and then they can pick the children up from school. They're there, and they get the job done. It's but I think that is the modern way of working, frankly, and I don't think, and it's actually more efficient for the government as well, because you're no longer having to pay enormous amounts of money for masses of offices that people are sitting in, when whereas now they can work from home, and the people working from home are happier, and the organisation that's got their people working from home are happy because they haven't got to pay for the office.
This is not a reason, by the way, viewers, that you shouldn't vote for Christian People's Alliance. He can't get everything right. Listen, Sid, we will move
Well,
on.
we disagree, but it's experience, isn't it? And also, to be fair, I've done a lot of knocking on doors, and when I've knocked on doors, there's been numerous times when people have come to the door and said, "Oh, sorry, I can't talk because I'm working from home, but I just answered the door because they thought it might be a delivery or something." And there's very rarely that somebody's come to the door and said, "Oh, I'm working from home, so I've got plenty of time to sit and chat to you." I mean, that is very, very rare. Far, far more often, people have said, "I'm working from home, so I can't stop. I can't stop and talk."
I'll tell you one thing we will agree on, and that's our next item. And everybody seems to forget this. We've been mentioning the problems throughout the world with aggressive Muslim taking over of countries and treating the people, especially Christians, who live in especially African countries. And of course, we've focused on Nigeria. And thankfully, so has Donald Trump, and he's done a lot of good there. A lot more to be done. But everybody forgets the Democratic, euphemism maybe, Republic of Congo. People every day of the week said, Christian people, there's a knock on the door. Are you a Christian? Are you prepared to renounce that? And if you're not, you're raped and killed. This is going on now. Nothing is done about it. A little bit is done about it, but there should be lots more focus on things like this. But there again, the world is not interested.
This is interesting. See, Open Doors, who highlight this sort of thing, have said that the number of Christians in the world being persecuted is now over 380 million, which is an enormous figure, frankly. And of course, I mean, the number one country in the world for persecuted Christians is Nigeria, which almost seems strange because there's so many Christians in Nigeria. But of course, there's a big difference between the north and the south. I mean, in the south, it's Christian dominated, but the north is Muslim dominated, and they habitually kill Christians. And the government is just, well, they're in denial. I mean, Tinubu's been on a state visit to the UK where he just said, no, 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 there's no persecution of Christians going on. When everyone knows there is. And Donald Trump's even highlighted it and sent well, about 100 troops, I think, to go and advise the Nigerian government to try and how to get to grips with it. You've highlighted Congo, but yeah, I mean, there's many other countries in the world where you could highlight it, and it is a major issue. And incidentally, during this election campaign, we've got a candidate standing in Lambeth, and the Lambeth Women's campaign I've asked questions of all the candidates as to what they were going to do about the violence against women and Muslims and Jews and whatever, that's going on in Lambeth. They didn't mention violence against Christians, but actually there's very serious violence against Christians. I know because, for instance, we've had Hatton Tash, who came over here from Turkey and was attacked with a knife simply for being a Christian, because she was speaking against Islam. And the guy tried to kill her. The police said, oh, because the guy went for her neck, and actually, unfortunately, she raised her hand and deflected the knife, so it didn't get to her neck. But she was stabbed, and the police never bothered to chase the attacker because they said, "Oh, it was an assault. It wasn't a well, it was clearly attempted murder." But we've had the attack on Jews, and people are very aware of the threats to Jews. People seem to be less aware of the threats to Christians, but they're there because there's no problem in Islam in attacking somebody with a knife. I mean, it's certainly permitted, if not encouraged by the religion. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, and lots of stuff is coming out about this now. In the fact of attacks on churches, and the latest list is worth pondering. In London Metropolitan Borough, there's a good old name for you. 561 attacks on churches in the last 12 months. West Yorkshire, 445. That's number two on the long list of vandalism, criminal damage, burning. Greater Manchester, 172. Now, let's look at the circumstantial evidence, which is probably truer than the real evidence these days. Why is it that the Muslims are given a grant to look after their mosques, which are hardly ever attacked in comparison to churches? Why is it they're given £39.4 million grant by the government? Places of Christian worship plus Hindu and Sikh. So the amount that gets the Christians is significantly less. 3.5 million. Sid, that's a mockery. How do they do it?
Well, Muslims are very good at lobbying for money. I mean, and they're very good at manipulating the political system. So, at the end of the day, I don't really blame them for looking after their own. But we as Christians need to be far more effective in lobbying for what we need and what we require and to highlight the issues that affect us, which is obviously why we exist as a Christian political party. And if only Christians would get behind us and realize that, we have to mobilize. You see, unfortunately, too many people have got this idea that Christians shouldn't be involved in politics, which is just utter nonsense. Because Muslims don't think for a moment that we shouldn't be involved in politics. They think to be involved in politics is very much part of their psyche. It needs to be more part of our psyche. If it was more part of our psyche, we could lobby, we could be in power, we could achieve what we want.
Point taken. We move on to the footy. Yes, and again, questions are being asked. Number one, why hasn't Michael Carrick been given the job at Manchester United? He's got more points than any other team since his reign started, than any other team in the Premiership. Should be straightforward, shouldn't it? Win over Liverpool at weekend.
Well, I think the most revealing statement was what came from Kobe Mino, who who is now 21, an England player, and becoming the poster boy of Manchester United. And he said, people love playing for Michael Carrick. He's a wonderful manager, and we love playing for him. So if the players are saying we love playing for this manager, it should be a no-brainer. Because you see, the thing is, as we said before, when we were talking about Amorim, Amorim at one point, I remember actually said, I hate my players. You see, and once you start saying things like that and you lose the dressing room, and then the players no longer enjoy playing for you, it's not surprising if you don't get the results. But when you've got a manager that the players love playing for and enjoying playing for, they enjoy the system that he's producing, you don't get rid of him because you think, oh, we can get a better manager, a bigger name. It's just mad. And by the way, while I'm just saying this, I think it's a great tribute as well to Zerbi, who's just taken over as manager of Spurs. And they won last night against Aston Villa. And the players were actually saying, we love playing for this manager. Everyone's now getting behind him. And the likely result is that Spurs are going to stay up. Obviously, somebody's got to go down, so it could be West Ham or Nottingham Forest that go down. But, you know, if the players enjoy playing for the manager and they're getting the results, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, not often I agree with you in footy, Sid, but there we go. Again, you're right.
So,
Oh, I tell you what came out of that match that I must mention another ridiculous thing with VAR. We disagree on VAR, but you're in the minority now, Sid. You're not in the majority. VAR and it was absolutely in that match when Sesko got the ball by accident, let's say, into the net and it hit him in the stomach. And his fingernail of the third finger could have possibly touched the ball. I mean, the game was stopped for three-quarters of an hour. I exaggerate, but it seemed that long just to go over VAR. And what a nonsense. And if you want further proof that VAR is the enemy, look at the difference between playing on the continent and playing in Britain. Oh, although it's coming to Britain, actually. Never mind the intention, whatever that could mean, of touching the ball and it's a penalty. How you get in somebody's brain, I don't know. It's if the ball strikes accidentally the hand. It's crackers. We're not getting any fair results, Sid.
but at the end of the day, with that one you're talking about, it was the right result because I mean the referee gave the goal,
Hmm.
and the VAR looked at it but didn't overturn it. But the Liverpool players and the Liverpool manager were all claiming his handball. So, a decision had to be taken. Now, the worst thing in that situation would have been if the referee had said, "Yeah, handball, no goal,"
Hmm.
because you know, because it looked as though it may have touched his hand. Now, I think it was the only thing that was wrong there is just takes too long because they're carefully looking at different angles. It's like so it takes 5 minutes to produce a decision. I mean, they need to develop technology to an extent where they can literally give an instant decision.
Get the joy back into football, ban it. Right, we move finally before the end. The World Cup has been given to America, it's been said, because it's a safe pair of hands. There's plenty of trouble spots throughout the world that they could finish up with a mess. We're all right going to North America. Well, I looked at the map over weekend. My goodness me. You've got one match in Vancouver, you've got one in the capital city of Mexico, you've got another in Florida. These are continents, and it's not like flying over to Paris or Spain. This is mega distance. And if you look at the differences between playing at 6,000 feet in 40 degrees centigrade and then rushing up to Toronto in Canada, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare and an expensive nightmare.
Well, yes, I mean, but the whole agreement was that Canada, Mexico, and United States would share the World Cup, and that was they applied on that basis. So if they apply on that basis, that's the what was then put to FIFA and what FIFA accepted. But they have got obviously different groups will play in different areas, so hopefully there won't be too much flying around because one group will be based in Canada, one group will be based in Mexico, and other groups will be based in the United States. It's obviously later on when you get to the knockout stage that you might have to do a bit of traveling, but I'm sure they can cope. I think it'll be a very successful World Cup.
And we're going to lose again, aren't we, Sid?
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think we've got a good manager. I think we've got some very, very good players, and we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Harry Kane is proving at Bayern Munich to be an absolute world-class player. I do fear if he's not fit, whether we're going to have a striker that can come anywhere near his competence, frankly.
Yeah, it'll be down to the bottom line. And maybe other teams have got more resilience than our team. Certainly in the past, there's been a lot of cotton wooling, holding of players. Some people would dare say, woke, man up, get on the field, do your job.
But if you compare England to Scotland, for instance, or Wales or Northern Ireland, who haven't even qualified, Scotland have qualified. Scotland's expectations are, well, if they get out of their group, that will be a fantastic achievement for Scotland. I mean, their expectations are that they're probably going to go to the World Cup and be knocked out in the group stage. England's expectations are that they'll definitely qualify from their group and hopefully get at least to the quarterfinals or semi-finals. So the expectations are way higher. There's nothing to guarantee we're not in the same place as Scotland, let alone Wales or Northern Ireland that didn't even qualify. And while I'm saying that, what about Italy? Italy haven't qualified now for the last three World Cups, and they were previously World Cup winners. And the whole nation is in complete mourning because they are supposed to be a football mad nation and they haven't qualified. So when in England we complain because we only make the quarterfinals or semi-finals, I mean, frankly, I think we should be glad that we're as successful as we are.
Were you alive in 1966?
Yes.
Well, there you go. It's a long time, Sid. Bless you. We'll see you shortly.